صباح الخير كل الناس كل العالم اللي موجودين هناك. We have the pleasure to have with us today Mr. Juna Nadzaro, who is the Artistic Director of Locarno Film Festival. He was also the General Delegate of the International Film Critics Week at the Venice Film Festival, a member of the Artistic Committee of International Film Rotterdam. He's a critic, he's a writer, he's collaborating with a lot of festivals in the world. And I can keep going for a while with the profile of Juna, but let's welcome Juna Nadzaro. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, shukran for this wonderful invitation. Sabah al-khair to all the people that are joining us.
Welcome, Juna. It's a pleasure. Juna, we were going to be discussing today how can we, what are the mechanisms for the beauty films to access to international festivals and distribution? You know that Yemen is a quite a particular case because the industry stops and there is not a lot of films in Yemen. So they are working hard to restart working on films, and there is this festival, which is really a nice initiative. So can you just give them an overview and what is the mechanism and how can they find festivals? Of course, they will look online, but is there any information that we can give them about this procedures?
Yes. First of all, I need to stress that the Locarno Film Festival is a bit more than a festival that takes place only during the 10 or 11 or 12 days of the actual taking place of the event. Over the many decades that the Locarno Film Festival has been existing so far, we have managed to stay in touch with the community that was always looking to Locarno as a kind of not only inspiration because they shared the value that we are promoting, but also because we had a conversation with them. Over the year, for instance, we created this initiative, which is called Open Doors, which has a 3-year span. And in each of these 3 years, it focuses on a region of the world. And we, for instance, send out a call for applications, not only for filmmakers, but also for screenwriters and producers. The reason behind this is that making a film is not only the desire to make a film, which obviously is crucial, but it's also the understanding that this desire needs to be met with other desires, which are, for instance, the desire to collaborate with people to make something that is possibly meaningful. And therefore, we are totally aware that not everyone is fluent or even familiar with the great wealth of funds operating in Europe, Northern Europe, or also elsewhere in the world, such as the US or Eastern Europe. So one of the goals that we have with Open Doors, for instance, is to try to put the different applicants in touch with the somehow intricacies of the bureaucracy, which can be sometimes bewildering if you come from another place and you are not fluent in English and so on. So this is one thing that we do. And the other thing that we do before we go into the how I do bring my film to your festival, another thing that we do, we try also to give some tutorial advice. So we work with the filmmakers that apply, for instance, to Open Doors, but we have also, and it's taking place now in Locarno, what we call the Spring Academy, where we send out calls to apply, and then a selected number of filmmakers, right now there are 12 in Locarno, will be selected from the huge wealth of application that we receive. This year we had more than 150. And these people come to Locarno, they will be tutored and mentored by a filmmaker. This year is the Italian filmmaker Michelangelo Frammartino, the director of The Hole, Il Buco, which premiered in Venice last year and is produced by French producer Philippe Baubert. And for instance, we have right now in Locarno a young Tunisian filmmaker, Younes Ben Slimane, who is in Locarno right now, working with Michelangelo and other students who are coming from Eastern Europe, South America, and so on. So before going again, I want to stress this, before going into the how do I present my film, I want to underscore that the importance of the community that is around a festival, because a festival is not just I showed my film there and then nobody remembers me after 6 months, and you know, maybe you lucked out once, but then the selection committee changed, and the director changed, and you will never have again the opportunity to show your film, etc., etc. So the idea that for us in Locarno is crucial is that films can only exist within the wider frame of a community of people, a diversified community of people who come together from different experiences and share their experiences in order to understand how to work together. I know that this sounds a bit lofty, like humanitarian and such, but believe me, it's not, because when I met the students of the Spring Academy last weekend in Locarno, it felt like we were doing something good, because we bring together young people who have either had a short movie in their local festival, or they managed to have their film in an international film festival. They've made a short documentary, and they all come together with their energies, their experiences, and they start to, when I say share, not only shared how they managed to be accepted in a festival, but also how they made their films. So these people would maybe not have an opportunity to work together if we were not putting out all these calls for Open Doors or the Spring Academy. And for instance, yesterday, the students of the Spring Academy in Locarno had the opportunity to participate in the masterclass that Michelangelo Frammartino did with his DOP, Renato Berta. Maybe these names sound a bit Italian to you, but for instance, Renato Berta has been the DOP of directors such as Jean-Luc Godard, Alain René, Manuel de Oliveira, Jean-Marie Straube, Philippe Garel, and others. So these are extremely experienced people who have worked in the industry of cinema. These are not improvised people. And Michelangelo Frammartino, his film has been traveling all over the world. It's a film about the recreation of a true speleological adventure that happened in the 60s, and they did the same thing as these scientists. So the film takes place into this huge cave that is over a kilometer long. And the film, so I mean, and this is something, and again, I stretch the importance of the word community, because films do not exist in a vacuum. Before the pandemic struck, I usually used to be invited, thanks to the gracious invitations of the organizers, in Tunis at the GCC, for instance, or in Ouagadougou, thanks to the people that are working there. And one thing is to see their films when they come to you, but you watch them at home in your own context, and you might or might not detect some quote unquote weaknesses and stuff, but you don't know where those films come from, in the sense that, okay, you understand that these films are, let's say, from some regions of the African continent, but you don't have I mean, you are still in your place in Europe, but the experience of meeting the people and talking and putting their experiences and their efforts in context, it shines immediately a different kind of light on the work, as I am sure you would be shining a different kind of light on the informations that I'm giving to you now when I'm talking about communities and so on, because there is a kind of understanding that the festival is a place where you show your films, and that's it. You need to be there because it's important and so on. But another thing that is crucial to making a film is also be fluent about the understanding of films. That is that, and now I'm getting a bit polemical, but how many filmmakers do actually watch films? How many screenwriters know about the work of other colleagues and so on? But still, all these people, they want to be in a festival because they feel that they need to get the work out there. So the network of the people that are working in cinema and are trying to make films is extremely important, because nowadays, with the end of the traditional ways of producing a film, you cannot but help thinking in wider circles. I mean, the way films were made in the 20th century with the big rich producer with a cigar that fell in love with your project, and they would shell out all the money, all the dough that he could to make you the film and pay you the big. I mean, it's also almost useless to say that, but that's gone. So nowadays, it's fun because people leave the room when they are watching a film as soon as the end credits start rolling. But that's when the lesson begins, Because if you endure this extremely long end credits that might last also up to 6 or 7 minutes, because the end credits are so long, because you need to read them, you would understand that behind one tiny film that comes from a place you have never heard of, there are so many institutions that have put so many different ways of putting a film of that is maybe institute. I'm not going to make any names just to avoid to be unfair toward other. But for instance, institution number 1 has done this. Institution number 2 has done that and has paid for the post-production of the film in a certain place. Institution number. So, and this is why, and this is the reason, because films are still made with money and are still rather expensive. And it's extremely difficult that the money comes just from one place, unless you live in a happy, subsidized country where all the money for your film comes from one place. But then you still need to understand how to get into the graduate juries where your film will be read, where your film will be voted, where your film will be supported, and so on. So what I'm saying is that it is important to understand the ecosystem in which you want your film to be experienced, seen, debated, and the circulation of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I'm sorry for my overlong answer, but I felt I had to say this because the second part is a bit easier but trickier. The thing is, when you submit a film in a place where, let's say, you have found out on the web how to submit your film to Locarno. I can say how we work. I have a selection committee of 5 persons. Then I have someone who watches the film that are not world premieres anymore. Then we have a selection committee for the short films. Inside this group of people, there are people that, thanks to their expertise, they are specialized in one or more territories. So let's say that your film, and I'm doing this example deliberately, let's say that your film comes from China. It will be seen by the person who speaks Mandarin or one of the languages of the Chinese continent. And this person is someone that knows both the culture and the story of Chinese cinema. And obviously, he will be responsible for cutting down the possible entries from the Chinese content that will be then discussed all together. And this is one thing. The other thing is, and obviously this the same way it works also for films that are coming from other regions. The other thing is, we work with producers, the people that make the film. They come to us, they submit the film, and so on. So this is also something that, and also with sales agents who come to us and say, this year we have on our slate, we have this and that, this and that, and that. Usually at this point, the question that rises is, oh, so a film that comes from a producer or a sales agent has more opportunities to be selected than a film that comes on its own without, without being supported, or a nice friendly word. I would say no, that's not the case, because at least in Locarno, we are trying to discover talents. We are trying to give our audience an experience in terms of films that can be meaningful, an experience that can enrich their perception of cinema. So back to this, as you have seen, the competitions in the film festivals are not endless. You have, let's say, 17 slots in competition, 16 slots in the secondary competition, then you have 10 out of competition, then you have something. All things considered, we might end up with 170, also the films from the retrospective perspective considered, the 200, but 200 is really, so you might still think, oh, well, in 200 films, there must be a spot for my film, but then you miss the information that what we receive in terms of submissions are more than 3,000 films each year. So when you put this figures, 3,000 plus with 170 films that end up being selected, there is quite a difference in terms of figures. Obviously, the other question is, who gives you the right to select this rather than this? This is a tricky question, and it's a question that has its legitimacy. That said, the thing is, we work, I mean, we are not being put there just because, but we usually come to this kind of jobs to an experience in working with films. Obviously, we work according to certain ideas, but maybe this could be a suggestion for a question later on. But I want to stress that we do not work according to our taste. We try to do something different. And yes, the very, very last thing I want to say before stopping and taking a breath is this. Festivals are still one of the more useful and powerful instruments in putting films out there. If your film ends up in the right festival and gets picked up by the right programmer who discovers it and puts it in his festival and so on, you might be in for a quite interesting ride. I mean, the previous edition of Locarno, my first one, has been extremely interesting in the way the films that we presented have been picked up by other festivals and distributors and so on. So, I mean, yeah. Next question.
Thank you for all this information. And I know for a fact that Locarno is a really special festival that gives a lot of opportunity for to young filmmakers from different regions, and there is usually a lot of Arabic and African films selected, so it is a window also to our region. This is why it's important also to know, to go and see on the website of Locarno what's going on and how to apply and all the information. For me, Locarno is something, I mean, it's like a model for us, for this region of the world who has difficulties to access to the big festivals. And everyone is dreaming about Venice, about Cannes, and about Toronto, and so on. But yeah, for Yemen is again, just going back to Yemen. Yemen is a special case. Last year, we all saw that there was a short film in Venice. Shaima Tamimi has her film selected in Venice. It was like, you know, a big push. So now there is like, we are expecting and waiting for this region to start giving us more content. So this is not a question, but just in terms of numbers, you said in Open Doors there was 150 and thousands in all competition, but from the Arab world and the regions, approximately the percentage of the films that you receive in application, do you have? Can you give us just a number? Mute. Can you unmute?
Sorry. Yes, I muted because notifications are coming in all the time, and you have this background of beeps and blobs and whatever. Yeah, it really depends. And it really depends also on how the work in a certain region is organized on the ground. For instance, the countries from Eastern Europe have been working a lot since the 90s in order, for instance, to get their film industry going. And we receive from them a lot of films every year. They have managed to create a strong industry with also actors that are known outside the boundaries of their homeland and so on. What I'm trying to say is that, for instance, over the year, if we speak for the MENA region, North Africa and Middle East, there have been a lot of situations that have been pushing to promote the cinema from this region, but it happened because there was a groundwork. For instance, my first year in Venice, the film that won the Golden Lion of the Future was a Tunisian film by a director called Aladdin Slim. And then we have kept presenting films from Lebanon. Not unfortunately, I mean, we had the opportunity to present the first film of a lady who's now in a war situation in Kiev, and this lady has been asked by the media to explain what is happening and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that the number of films that are submitted is strongly depending on the networks that these countries have been able to create in their own region where they operate. So for me, this last 10 years have been extremely interesting because the films coming from the so-called MENA region have been the element, in my opinion, that has literally made a great shift in the perception of what cinema can be. Some of the most interesting new female voices have come from this region and so on. And also producers such as Miriam Sassin from Lebanon, Beirut, before I mean, everything stopped again in Beirut. She has been extremely instrumental, not only in producing films, but also in trying to connect what was happening at home in Beirut, Lebanon, with the energies in Europe and elsewhere. So Miriam was able to connect different situations. I'm speaking about her not because I'm promoting what she did, even though it deserves to be promoted, but because I have been able to observe how things work there before the blast of the 4th of August happened. And so the thing is, films, again, they are not created in a vacuum. It really depends on, and before the pandemic, it was interesting to see how in Tunis, everybody from Europe, from France, from Germany, also from Italy was meeting there, even though maybe they might have seen most of the films, but it was a great opportunity to strike conversations, to speak with producers, meet directors, and on and on and on. So again, last year in Locarno, we presented a film by a director whose name, shame on me, I can still not pronounce. The film was Streams by Emily. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm really terrible at this. And that was an extremely interesting experience because people maybe imagine to come and see a film about, you know, the same stories that they have learned from other films. But then they discovered a film about youth in Tunis and this and that, and especially an image of the country that maybe they haven't seen yet. The film has been a great success, has gone on to more than 27 festivals after Locarno. Mehdi has been all over the news everywhere, etc. So again, it really depends on the strength of the local network in promoting films. When I am scouting for films, I usually speak also to the representative of the local film institution. So I speak to the person that is in charge to present what has been done during a year to the festival director. So it is crucial to create strong film institution on the ground that are able to reach out and have useful conversation with people all over. And just to make usually we festival representatives are invited by these institutions all over the world, where we meet with the filmmakers, producers, screenwriters, but even more important, the persons who are in charge of the local film commissions, who might be interested in saying, and maybe this is getting too specific, maybe could be something for the next question, but let's go into it, because sometimes the local institution, they have a certain amount of money. They need to understand what they want to do with this money, because money begins and ends. It depends how you spend it. So let's say that a specific place, without naming names, can fiscally tax reduction help if someone comes and makes a film in collaboration, or if they can source out certain abilities, certain talents, and so on. So this is extremely important, that if I know that if I'm coming to make my film there, I can have this is the principle of the film commissions and how things start and so on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But my question on you got my question, because my next question was how to do this network and how to make people know where are the festivals and how to, and because the numbers depends, of course, but on the years, on the production, on the capability of some countries and access, and some countries don't have access, so it is complicated. But Yeah. But I'm actually right now in Algeria, and I can see on my own small experience that I'm living now, that people don't have the information and they don't know how to get the information, because of course the institutions here don't do their jobs. So it is up to us, people from the industry, people who are trying to do programmers and I mean, to spread the world and to find solutions, because there is great countries who are doing really good job, like Tunisia, like Morocco. Now there is other countries from the Arab world who is doing really nice, but there is Algeria, there is Yemen, there is Iraq, there is a lot of other countries who don't have this institution, and it will be taking like ages to get something. So I'm just discovering that people know like the big festivals because everybody is talking about them, but they don't know the mechanism, they don't know how to do, they don't know how to apply. And also, maybe I'm speaking too much, sorry, Jonah,
No,
because this is
lovely.
just something I'm noticing in these countries. There is also something that we are discussing a lot in our countries here. You know, when you have a successful film in Cannes, Venice, Toronto, whatever, in a big festival category A, like we say, the other filmmakers, the younger one, just try to do the same, and sometimes they go, you know, they try to copy or to try to do the same kind of films, and there is like a format from some funds and some festivals that we are feeling here. This is a feeling, and this is a lot of discussion we had over the last 3-4 years, that there is I'm not talking about Locarno especially, but I'm talking in some other festivals that are asking, they're pushing somehow filmmakers to do the films that they need and they want, because this year it's Rwanda. We need films from Rwanda, and we need this kind of subject. This year we need, yeah, there is an offer and demand. This is, what do you think about it?
Well, it is true that a certain way of organizing things creates also a kind of reflex about inbuilt expectations. So let's say that if you come from an African country, people, I mean, the European audience expects to see a film about poverty, unemployment, sick children, exploited women, you name it. It's like when you go to watch a film from North America, you expect to see car chases, explosions, the lot, and when you don't have it, and you say that North American film is not good. So I mean, that's the usual thing. But the interesting thing is that the films that have been able to put certain countries on the map have been films that went against the grain of certain expectations. I know that I'm not to dwell too much on Alaeddin Slim, but with his 2 films, he did something that was completely outside the perception of what a Tunisian film should look like. On the other hand, Mehdi, with his streams, did something that was also completely, and ultimately all the films are different. The idea is, what are you trying to say with your film? And in terms of communication, it's not very difficult to submit your film to Cannes. I mean, you just go on the website, and you and you do whatever you have to do. The point is to get into a conversation. So this is for me really crucial, because sometimes we receive films from different, and we have the perception that those people, they have goodwill, they want to do things, but they cannot understand what is the reality of the context. So, and when you mention Algiers, I mean
Algeria.
Yeah, sorry for that. As I see, I'm very sorry. I hope this will not cause a diplomatic incident.
Definitely.
What I'm saying is, Hassan Halfarani was in Takmil with his last film.
No.
Then he came to Locarno, and then he went all over the world. But Hassan, and I'm taking some pride in saying this, Hotel, what was it? Hotel Afrique Hotel. His first medium documentary was selected by Visions du Réel, where we worked. But again, when I was working in Visions du Réel, we were also receiving 3,000 plus more films, all documentaries. And at Visions du Réel, we worked, and they still work in a different way. They see every other film. And we do that as well, but in terms of a festival that has to present both fiction, documentary, experimental, the choice of what ultimately gets selected is a bit harsher. And in the case of Hassan's film, it quite stood out, because the guy is a filmmaker, and I know this is getting tricky, but you immediately, if you are a programmer, if you are someone that selects him, you immediately understand if there is a gaze or if there isn't, because this is ultimately the first criteria. And I know this is tricky, because someone can say, what is a gaze? And this would open up the gates of hell in terms of a theoretical discussion that could last for days. But I think we were not wrong when we selected at Nyon Hassan's film, because then he proved that he is a filmmaker. So again, it is let me rewind. The idea of what cinema is, or cinema can be, is made of small beams of lights everywhere in the world. There is always a filmmaker that puts a whole country on the map. In the 70s for the Philippines, it was Lino Brochka, then he died. Then Lav Diaz came along, and now the Philippines are again. So the thing is, you need to be completely sure of what you want to do. We are speaking about filmmakers from Rwanda, and it's quite an interesting bunch of people who are doing different things and with different voices. Then we have filmmakers from Sudan, Abu Amjad Alala, and
Abu Amjad. Yeah. If I may interrupt you,
yes, please.
I just took Rwanda as an example, because a few years ago there was no cinema in Rwanda, not really. I mean, at the national stage, until Joël Kerkezi came up with the Jungle of the Mercy, and then we discovered, not we, but a lot of countries in Europe discovered that there is interesting things going on in Rwanda, and then Amjad bring up also Sudan, and we they are like porte-parole, j'arrive plus à trouver le mot, sorry. they are the voices of their countries, and they're promoting it, and they bringing them to the international stage. So yeah, but what I was willing to say, yeah, it was just
but the
discussion that we had recently was like, filmmakers have to somehow respond to certain standards, and sometimes there is like putting the finger on the map and saying, okay, now the industry is focusing on this country and not this country, you know. So it's like, you know, it's not like, I'm not talking again about Locarno or you, because we know each other, we know Locarno, but this is an internet, an impression, you know, here. So yeah, it's a long debate.
No, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that obviously we have been at loss for voices from the African continent for a long time. After Ouedraogo died, after Souleymane Cissé stopped making films, after others, I mean, I'm not even talking the ones that died early, such as Djibril Diop Mambéty or film people like Ousmane Sembène. I mean, we have never had again filmmakers with a voice as distinctive as them. I mean, Haroun Saleh, he's still a darling.
Saleh Haroun.
Yeah.
So people understand, yeah.
Yeah, he's still present in the lineups in Cannes and so on. So there is a need. I mean, I am pretty much convinced that there is a desire, a need to have new voices. And I had the chance to meet in Ouagadougou the filmmaker from Nigeria, CJ Obaisi. Yeah, and I invited him in competition in Locarno. I took a chance with his film, and it paid out because the film went on to many other festivals. He was also able to gather some funds to finish the post-production of his film. And yeah, so again, in order to make his new film, Mami Wata, CJ became a globetrotter. He went everywhere. He applied to every fund. And it's not an easy job. It's time consuming. It's frustrating, because if you are an African filmmaker and you say that you want to make a film about legends, about witches, about this and that, and they tell you, oh, but this is a horror film. And when he says, oh yeah, I'm a fan of horror films, they go, oh no, I mean, we're not interested in this kind of African films. We want films about poverty, about exploitation, about colonization, and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's a real job getting the idea out there that you exist with your own ideas. And
of course.
And the reason why CJ had to struggle 3 times as much is because the infrastructure of cinema in Nigeria is concentrated, focused on commercial films, the so-called films from
Nollywood. Yeah.
And the filmmakers that were aiming at having a larger conversation outside the national boundaries of Nigeria, they were shunned upon because they wanted to be artists. But now CJ was telling me that with the unprecedented success of his film Juju Stories, which was a portmanteau film made with 2 other directors, Abba Makama and Michael Mamuna, and people in Nigeria, suddenly the people with money and so on started to know this and thinking, oh, maybe we can get our films to festivals. So it always comes down to how much you do. Obviously, if you have a structure behind your back that says, oh, we have this guy that has gone to Locarno, Berlin, let's support him. Let's create a structure where we gather, for instance, the scripts that people want to do, and we send them to the people in Berlin at the Robert Bosch Stiftung.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, just throwing examples out there.
Yeah.
You know, and the World Cinema Fund, and see what happens. Again, films do not happen in a void anymore. I mean, even if you would, I mean, even Orson Welles today would need to have someone who backs him quite strongly.
Yeah.
Oops, we have
agreed.
We have
and it depends also.
Left.
Yeah, and it depends also on the budget, because you know the money makes a difference when you have a producer, when you have funds. So there is a question about this. كيف أحصل على تمويل لفيلمي الأول? Okay, how can I get a fund for my first film? Actually, هذا السؤال I think I'm gonna answer in Arabic if you don't mind, and then translate just, and then you give your answer, Jonah, if it's okay for you. Yeah. أولاً لازم يكون عندك producer، لازم يكون عندك منتج باليمن، بالبلد اللي أنت موجود فيه، وهذا شغل البروديوسر. لازم يروح يشوف الفاندز، الانترناشونال فاندز، راح يشوفوا البلاتفورمز، development for platforms, co-producers, co-production platforms, and so on. هذا procedure طويلة وتتطلب جهد كثير وشغل يعني سنوات sometimes. بس من أول شيء لازم يكون producer. وعشان احنا بنحكي أكثر على distribution, I think next الماستر كلاس مع مي عودة راح تكون هي بتعرف ترد عليكم كيف تمويل الأفلام في البلدان العربية. Jonah, I was just explaining my vision of 6. Okay, all right. We have 5 minutes left. So how can I produce? How can I get funds for my first film for Yemeni filmmaker? So I was just saying quickly that at first you need a producer there, and then it's a job of a producer. And as we are talking about more than about festivals, so there is a platforms in many festivals in the world that we can apply. So I mean, I just made a resume in a minute. So if you want to add something, just go ahead.
Well, the question to how do I fund my film is actually the question that worries all filmmakers in the world. And usually I start answering this question with, I never wanted to be a filmmaker. I always wanted to be a filmmaker, a film critic, and a film programmer. You need to be as obsessive to get money for your film, and you need to be obsessive about your ideas, and you need to endure. It's not easy because the films are now made mostly with what is called soft money. Soft money is public money, subsidized money, as opposite to hard money, which is money that belongs to someone. And and soft money comes through bureaucratic channels, which can be easier or a bit more intricate, but you need to be able to navigate the complexities of these systems. One of the things that we are quite proud of then when we did the 3-year stint with the people in Open Doors with Myanmar, Mongolia, and all, these people didn't know anything about the ways the northern the European and North European funds worked. And right now we have people that are completely fluent in this kind of things, and that have started in their own countries to explain and help people to make applications. So it's not enough to have a good idea. It's not enough to have a good project. You need to be convincing. You need to be believable. And instead of having a great idea, sometimes it could be more useful to have a great team. So if you are going to someone in order to ask money, you should say, I have a producer who is willing to shell out that much. I have an interest from a sales company in Europe. I have applied to do this and this for these reasons. I can break down my film in this percentages of costs, and I can work around this and that and so on. So it's a filmmaker today, and this is maybe a bit disappointing to hear for someone, a filmmaker today has to be the entrepreneur of his own idea. He needs to know that an idea is not good enough. You need to understand that there are so many elements at stake in making a film that you need to be your own entrepreneur, and you need to know your project in and out. And it's always good to have 2 or 3 backup plans, because if something does not work, you don't want to get stuck for years and years hoping that one film just finds the right ear and begins rolling. So you need to be working all the time on more than one thing. And you need to really, I mean, I know that internet is not everywhere the same, etc., but this is, again, is why I'm speaking about community. With Open Doors, we have created this thing that is called the Open Doors Toolbox. And we have also mentoring sessions online where we not only discuss scripts, but where we also answer more specifically than I do now, questions about how do I finance my film, and especially where do I ask, and how can I get attention for my films, and so on. And this again,
we have 30 few seconds left, Jonah. Okay. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for your attention. It was great to be here.
Yes. I'm so sorry, and thank you so much. Thanks to you. Yeah, maybe I hope to see you in person very soon, because we are done with the virtual this year.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good luck with everything, Jonah, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for bye-bye.
Bye.